I found myself to be almost like dumbfounded when people give me the advice of like, you don't know how to do X, so hire a CMO to help you. I'm like, we have the best engineering team that I can possibly assemble. We don't have a VP of engineering. Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to talk about what are some things that big companies do that startups don't do. Things that work in big companies and don't work in startups. The first one is big companies tend to hire a CMO, CTO, CFO for the types of things they run. That's not something you should start with in a startup. I think a lot of times we look at a company and they never run a startup. And so they say, well, I guess I know how to help you. So a big company has a CMO. You don't have a CMO, so you need a CMO. That's the delta. It's almost like they do a diff between the two versions, and then they think that's what you need. It is true that eventually we will have a CMO, but not right now. But be more precise. The problem statement is you don't have X, so you're going to hire a VP of X to do your job. And I think that is something the big companies do, but the startups shouldn't do. Let me give you a couple examples. So Plaid, the payments integration company. In one of the interviews, the founder said, I actually had like 3 or 4 AEs and SDR, junior SDRs, and I was the VP of sales until we got to like $10 million in ARR. And so they never had a VP of sales until they get to like at least 8 figures in revenue. So that's one example. The other example is Greenhouse. The founder was managing 12 SDRs until they have a SDR manager. Not that I want to do that part, but you can see that this playbook of you're not good at sales, so hire a VP of sales. You're not good at marketing, hire a VP of marketing. That is the anti-pattern of a startup. And so I have listened to advice from some of the investors in the past of like, you're not good at X, so hire the expert on X. The problem with that statement is you don't know what to look for in that person. You don't know if you haven't done the job. You don't know whether they're good at that job. I also want to attack one premise, which is whatever the big companies have, your startups should follow. That's a terrible way of running a startup. What does that mean? Big companies do X, and so startups should also do X. Big companies have these recharge days. Big companies have KPIs. Big companies have this elaborate QA process. Big companies do A/B testing. Big companies do PowerPoint presentations. Big companies have these big presentations where all the stakeholders are in the room and they hash it out like with 30 people. It's like a ritual of like presenting the product and then getting everyone buy in. None of these things we should technically do at a startup. Maybe eventually you do them, but you just don't do them at a startup initially. A lot of times folks give me the advice, well-intentioned. Maybe I just like, thank you. I'm at a big company. I've worked at large companies, in many, many large companies. I know how it's being done, but that's not the way you do it in a startup. Now, I think I can still fail in a startup, but even if I fail, I still believe that these principles help. It's not because I don't do them. It's because there's something else that caused the startup to fail. So by no means am I saying that I know how you should run a startup, because otherwise by definition we'll be very, very successful. But I do know even if we end up failing, it's not because we don't hire a CMO. Okay, let's put it that way. So I want to be a little bit more precise on this phenomenon that I'm attacking, which is a non-X founder look at a startup and the way they evaluate is whether a big company has X and whether you have it or not. One example will be, these are the things that the big companies do and you don't do them, therefore you should do them. What they fail to recognize is that does doing that cause the startup to succeed, or that is just one of the things they add on at the end and actually slow down their process and did not contribute to their success, but it's just something they have to do because it's a big company. So what you observe is correlation. You have no idea why the startup is successful. So to give an example, Google now has a huge management team, and they did lay off 10% of their management workforce, management layer, but they had a lot of managers. But they didn't introduce the managers until they were wildly successful. And things move very slowly. It's very, very HR focused, and they are tiptoeing on everything they do. And as a result, a lot of the products got shut down because they didn't meet certain requirements. But did that contribute to their success? Or that was just after they got really big, they need to be careful about every step they do. Another example, that correlation of what a big company does versus the causation of whether this contribute to its initial success is big companies have a big campus. You have free food, you have yoga lessons, you have, meditation rooms. At the evening, you can take, $2 home. Like all of those things benefits the perks. Look at the big office that the big companies have. Like you want to say, oh, wow, because they have big offices, this is the secret to success. So you should also get a huge office, and that's how you can become successful. It's the equivalent of like you observe someone that has made it, and they have a very, very nice house and mansion and drive a nice car, and you define that is what caused them to be successful. That's not true. So be very careful about people who haven't done it and give you advice of, well, this company has X and you don't have it and you don't look like a company, so therefore you will never be a big company. That is so not true. And the fallacy there is that correlation is not the same as causation. Anyway, I think there are a lot of other things that I can talk about. Things like calibrations, the process of getting promoted. These are what the big companies do, and the startups don't do them. Now, I will say that recently, there are a lot of big companies that try to eliminate things that did not initially contribute to their success. And they were only doing them because all the other companies were doing them. And so they were following a herd mentality. But there were some founders that end up being like, on first principle, does this even help the company? If it doesn't, let's get rid of it from the big companies. So that's a good thing. So I'm creating this video because I found myself to be almost like dumbfounded when people give me the advice of like, you don't know how to do X, so hire a CMO to help you. I'm like, we have the best engineering team that I can possibly assemble. We don't have a VP of engineering. So yes, that it is correct that we need to work on marketing, but it is also not correct that I should hire X to do the marketing part. I need to learn marketing on my end. And then, is this the most important thing, right? How much marketing did OpenAI do, right? How much marketing did Tesla do? Did Tesla even have a CMO? I don't think they have a CMO. Elon Musk is the CMO. So like, I can come up with multiple examples where that statement is not true. And so don't fall into the trap of like, this is what the big companies do, and then you should follow as well. Really think from first principles. Does it help you right now? Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.